It's the Joe Pag Show. Really glad to have you here. Really glad to have back the Republican senator from the great state of Texas. It's Ted Cruz. Ted, how are you?
Pags, I'm doing terrific. How about yourself?
I'm living the dream. So I've been flying around. I just got back from Florida, and I've been talking to a lot of people about this impeachment thing. Ted, many people, I'm not polling all of America, although if you read some of the magazines or watch some of the TV networks, you only have to talk to 500 people, and you know what everybody in America thinks. But people aren't engaged by this. People not only don't care, but they think that it's ridiculous that it's happening. Are you feeling the same thing, or are you sort of in that bubble in Washington where everybody acts like this is the biggest thing going on?
Joe, I think you're exactly right. Every time I'm back home in Texas, people in Texas, people across the country, I think, are not following this. They're bored by it.
Yeah.
People in Texas are focused on jobs. They're focused on higher wages. They're focused on energy and oil and gas. They're focused on securing the border. They're focused on rebuilding the military and the 187 new federal judges that we've confirmed to defend the Constitution and Bill of Rights. Those are the priorities, I think, of Texans and the American people. Washington, on the other hand, congressional Democrats, their obsession is attacking the president. It's the only priority they have. And I think this impeachment is the direct result of that.
They probably would have had a better chance had the economy sucked, or had we been in some war that we shouldn't be in, or had something been going wrong where his policies ruined this industry or ruined our trade. Look, his trade policies have worked. His lower regulations and lower taxes, something you've been advocating forever, have worked. The economy is booming, 50-year low unemployment. Hispanic, black women, all working more than they've ever worked in history. People are busy going to work and buying houses and buying cars. I mean, why would the Democrats, and I'm sorry to put you in the mindset of a Democrat, but why would the Democrats not drop this the moment he released the transcript and the moment they realized that his economy is doing exactly what he said he would do?
Well, I think it's because they see it as their only chance to win. They're so consumed by hatred that they want to attack him, and they recognize, look, this impeachment is about overturning not one but two presidential elections. They, number one, want to overturn the 2016 election and remove the president from office because they're mad that the American people voted for Trump over Hillary. But number two, this is about the 2020 election. They want to take Donald Trump off the ballot. They want to prevent the American people from voting for him because they're afraid that if given the choice, that the American people are going to vote for free enterprise over socialism, that we're going to vote for jobs over poverty, that we're going to vote for securing the border versus open borders. And so this is politics. This is warfare by another means, which is abusing the Constitution. That's what the congressional Democrats are doing. They're abusing the Constitution to carry out their political and partisan hatred. It
is Senator Ted Cruz, Republican of the great state of Texas. He's got a new podcast called Verdict with Ted Cruz, and you can get it up at, where you download your Apple Podcasts. I'm a little bit mad at you, Ted, because now you're taking me on. Now you're doing podcasts, and I listened to it, and holy crap, it's really good. So I want people to go and listen to that. I think that it's very, very smart, very wise. This is how we access Americans today, right? Because we're all on the go, and if we want to download and listen to some good content from Ted Cruz, who we're a fan of, or who we want to listen to what he has to say out of Washington, this is the way to go. You just take it with you on your device.
Well, Joe, that's exactly right. And what I've been doing, so we launched the podcast this week. It's Verdict with Ted Cruz.
Yeah.
And every night after the impeachment trial, I jump in a truck and head over to the studio and record it that night, typically within an hour of the trial ending. And so, the first night we didn't end until 2 a.m. I recorded this thing at 3 a.m.
Wow.
But it's a half hour, and it is my thoughts of what happened that day, and the substance and the issues. And in particular, look, you turn on cable TV and you see people screaming at each other. You see little 30-second sound bites that don't say anything. And I think people are hungry for substance. So what I'm trying to do is walk through the facts that matter and walk through the constitutional issues that matter. And so it's a half hour every night. And it's been amazing. We launched it 3 days ago, and it's already one of the top 10 podcasts in the country.
Amazing.
People are going and downloading it. You can get it at verdictpodcast.com, and people are downloading, they're subscribing, because the news media won't cover the substance. And it's important to know what's going on. I'm trying to address the real issues, and most of the media is not.
And I want people to go and get that. You say that it's at verdict@podcast.com, because I think you can get it at Apple Podcasts as well, or pretty much anywhere that it's distributed.
Podcast.
Yeah.
Anywhere you do podcasts, you can download it. But Apple Podcast is works well, and it's an opportunity. So, for example, last night I spent the entire show talking about the substantive evidence of corruption of Burisma. This is the Ukrainian natural gas company that was paying Hunter Biden, Joe Biden's son, $1 million a year. And the reason that matters so much is yesterday, I think, was a really important day in the trial, because the House Democrats effectively threw Joe Biden under the bus. I don't know if they did so on purpose or not, but they argued at great length that there was no basis whatsoever to investigate Burisma. There was no evidence of corruption, that it was phony, that it was bogus, that it was fraudulent. And I got to say, Joe, that is an absurd proposition.
Right.
And so last night's podcast, I just try to walk calmly and systematically through. Here's all the evidence of corruption. You have Burisma spending $1 million to pay Hunter Biden, a kid with no background in oil and gas, but he was the vice president's son. And you have the vice president who is on film bragging about how he threatened to block $1 billion in aid to Ukraine unless they fired the prosecutor who was prosecuting Burisma, who was investigating Burisma, the company paying his son $1 million a year. And so one of the things we did last night on the podcast is we played that clip, the news media doesn't want to play the film of Joe Biden bragging about doing this. And this goes right to the heart of the case, because the reason the president is going to be acquitted is because any president has the authority and, in fact, the responsibility to investigate corruption. And there was very significant evidence of corruption involving Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and Burisma. And at a minimum, it needed to be investigated. And that's what the evidence shows.
It's Senator Ted Cruz, Republican, the great state of Texas. Get that podcast, Verdict with Ted Cruz. Also go to tedcruz.org for everything Ted Cruz. Ted, you and I talked about this many, many times over the years, and I wonder, why do you think the Founding Fathers didn't put term limits in for those in the House and those in the Senate? And the reason I ask is there really is no recourse. Adam Schiff is lying. Jerry Nadler's lying. Hakeem Jeffries yesterday said the entire reason why we're doing this is we must remove this guy. I mean, he basically said that. Al Green from your area of Texas has said we started the impeachment investigation when he was running for president. That's how early it was. It had nothing to do with a phone call with Ukraine. Why do you think the Founding Fathers didn't put that check and balance in there? Because Pelosi and Nadler and Schiff and Green are not going to get a really good challenge, and all these idiots are going to be back in the House. My word, idiots. And there's not going to be any recourse. This guy's going to be found not guilty. There will be no consequences for this sham they just pulled.
Well, you're right that we should have term limits, and I think if the Founding Fathers could see what we have today, they would have included term limits in the Constitution. As you know, I am the author of a constitutional amendment in the Senate to mandate term limits: 2 terms for senators, 3 terms for House members.
Yeah.
I think it is a critical tool to ending the corruption, ending the swamp, and getting career politicians out of Washington. And you know, it's amazing. You look at something like term limits, overwhelming majority of Americans support it. That's true of Republicans. That's true of Democrats. That's true of independents. That's true of libertarians. You know, the only group that doesn't support term limits? Career politicians in Washington.
Congress, right.
That's exactly right. And I think we're seeing the consequences of career politicians in Washington that are willing to abuse the Constitution to try to attack a president who was elected by the American people.
Adam Schiff yesterday said right matters. And the media ran with that as if that was somehow, you know, a Shakespearean line. It's not. It's a guy saying, just trust us, we're right, and right matters. Well, they're not. Ted, have they spelled anything out in the hours and hours and hours of them droning on that you didn't know? And have they spelled anything out that makes you more clear on why they think there's been some other high crime or misdemeanor here?
They have not proven their case. They haven't met the constitutional threshold of high crimes and misdemeanors. Now, listen, I'll say this. Adam Schiff is a talented trial lawyer.
Yeah.
I think he's had some effective moments making his case, but his case is entirely one-sided. If you look at what the House did, it partisan show trial. They didn't allow the White House, they didn't allow the president to call any witnesses. They didn't allow the White House to cross-examine any witnesses. They only allowed one side of the case. They had 17 witnesses. They focused only on the prosecution. They excluded all the defense witnesses. It was a kangaroo court. The good news is the Senate is doing a much better job of it. We are providing a fair trial. What does a fair trial mean? It means we allow sides to present their case. It means we respect due process. So we've given the House managers all the opportunity to present their case, and we've sat there dutifully listening to their arguments, even as they've been repetitive and redundant and over again the same damn thing.
Yeah.
And then starting tomorrow, we're going to give the president and his lawyers the opportunity to present their case. And that'll be the first time the president has had to defend himself, because the House show trial didn't give him that chance. And once that is done, once both sides have presented their case, we will move to judgment and the president will be acquitted. And the reason the president will be acquitted is the facts show that any president has the authority to investigate corruption, and there was overwhelming prima facie evidence of corruption with Burisma and Joe Biden and Hunter Biden. And the facts show that the House managers have not demonstrated a high crime or misdemeanor, which is the constitutional standard for impeachment. That's why the end result of this will be acquittal, a judgment of not guilty for the president.
There's not even a material claim of any crime at all, not even like a speeding ticket. I mean, there's nothing here at all that could be even called a violation. So is there any recourse, Ted, or can they just do this, get away with it? Because he's going to be acquitted, as you say, and he's going to run for re-election, probably be reelected in some sort of a landslide because of the economy, and he's done a good job. Is there really no recourse? Can they just start this back up again when this fails? Can they start another impeachment trial or another impeachment investigation in the House? This is going to be a revolving door if the House doesn't go back to the Republicans, and you and I both hope that it does. But if it doesn't, they're never going to stop for another 4 years.
Look, the only recourse that is effective is the ballot box.
Yeah,
and the answer needs to be in November. These Democrats who have demonstrated, number one, that they don't care about the priorities of the American people. They don't care about focusing on jobs and the economy and securing the border and keeping this country safe and defending the Constitution. But number two, that they are willing to abuse the Constitution for partisan ends because they hate the president.
Right.
That's their only priority. The recourse is to vote them out of office and have instead representation that is focused on the priorities of Texans and the priorities of Americans. And by the way, there's a real precedent for that if you think back to the Bill Clinton impeachment.
Right.
The Bill Clinton impeachment, the American people were not happy with that, and that reelected Bill Clinton. I mean, it proved an enormous benefit to Bill Clinton going through that. I think the same thing is happening to the Democrats, which is that the American people are tired of these games and tired of Democrats caring about their partisan priorities rather than jobs and the interests of their constituents.
And also soon thereafter, the entire House and Senate went to the Democrats. And that was a political price that the Republicans paid for what they did with Bill Clinton, even though there really were crimes there. It's Senator Ted Cruz. The name of the podcast is Verdict with Ted Cruz. And I'll say this, and I mean this. You sitting through hours and hours of testimony and the opening arguments and all that, and then putting it together in a podcast for a guy like me is such a benefit because I don't have to go through watching all the cable news. I get the filter taken out because you're a guy that sat there and listened to it and took it all in, and I know how you think. You really ingested it, and you're giving us a direct response to what it is that they're saying, and I appreciate that.
Well, I'm glad to do it, and I will say it is a privilege each and every day representing Texas and representing 28 million people and standing here and knowing my job is to fight for Texans and to fight for the Constitution and watching congressional Democrats abuse the Constitution. It is wrong, and I feel privileged to have a chance to stand up against it.
Oh, we appreciate you. It's Ted Cruz. He's the Republican senator for the great state of Texas. Ted, let's talk soon. Appreciate you.
God bless.